Good morning, Villa fans, and welcome to a match preview for Aston Villa versus Ipswich Town on Saturday, 3 p.m. kickoff at Villa Park. Just really wanted to sort of get on and sort of dive into this. Obviously, I haven't seen Unai Emery's press conference, which I think is due tomorrow, obviously. We'll get some more in-depth team news tomorrow, especially around sort of Ezri Konsa and where he's at. Obviously, the injury against Tottenham in the Cup didn't look good. Pulling up when Tottenham were about to score, and it's never a good look when a player sort of pulls up, the game is still going on, and he's out of the game. That for me would suggest serious sort of alarm bells. And Ezri Konsa is not the type of player to sort of stay down or pull out of a challenge, or unless there's something majorly wrong there. So I'm hoping the medical team have managed to get hold of him and see what's going on. But I would envisage that he's probably looking at a good couple of weeks out now. And thank goodness we made the 8th position in the Champions League and we're not playing this week. Can you imagine, if Konsa was out and all of a sudden we had to play a playoff game in the Champions League against a Bayern Munich or a Real Madrid or whoever it might be, Borussia Dortmund even, and you're going into that with Bogard and Kamara as your starting centre-backs. Thank goodness we made the top 8 in the Champions League. That's a blessing. Ipswich are not going to be easy. Hopefully we've got this man over here, Axel Disasi, in line for a debut now, even though he has had very limited sort of game time at Chelsea this season. But it looks like if he's fit, he plays. Because if Konsa's out, you can imagine it's going to be Disasi and Kamara at the back. And Bogard as that sort of versatile kind of backup from the bench, I would imagine so. Let's see. Tyrone Mings, we're not sure how far he is away from returning. Pau Torres put something up on his Insta about the recovery journey back that he's had so far. Back in the gym now, sort of doing his own sort of personal kind of training. But I think he's a little bit away from actually being out on the grass and joining the team. So, he's obviously probably going to be out for at least another 3 to 4 weeks, I would imagine. So it is Tyrone Mings. Hopefully that could be back for this and in line to play against one of his former teams in Ipswich, and where he started off his career. So that would be, great if he did make a comeback and was available for Saturday's game. If not, and Konsa's out as well, then it does look like Disasi and Kamara could be our choice. First choice centre-back pairing, and obviously not played together before. There's not going to be that sort of understanding. I hope they work together closely during training this week. We shall see what happens there. And then Matty Cash, it looks like he's still going to be missing from this game as well. So it looks like Andres Garcia, who impressed against Tottenham in the Cup, will continue at right back, I would imagine. Showed good energy. I like the way that he offered sort of overlaps, getting forward on more than, on every occasion, really. It seemed to give Bailey a little bit more space, a little bit more time. And it's something that Matty Cash, he's hesitant to do. He sort of fly around the outside and overlap. Whether that's an instruction from Unai Emery or not, I'm not too sure. But he just seems very reluctant to kind of do it as much as what we saw from Andres Garcia against Tottenham. So, I imagine he's going to start at right back, left back. As I said, we need to keep continuity in defence. So Luca Digne, I think, will continue there, and Ian Martin will be off the bench again. And Luca Digne has been very good, so continue with him. And then obviously, as I mentioned, centre-backs Disasi and Kamara is what I would imagine. And then moving forward ahead of that, you're probably looking at John McGinn again, captaining the side from CDM alongside Yuri Tielemans. And John McGinn probably had his best game of the season, I would say, against Tottenham. Absolutely fantastic. In that CDM position. So I don't really see him playing further forward now in that front three option. So this CDM position will probably be where he's going to find most of his game time now. And it all depends, if Kamara is having to play centre-back, then it's going to be McGinn that plays in there. Onana, we've got no word about his injury or illness and why he missed the game against Tottenham. But, he just doesn't seem to be reliable enough to sort of come in and play. And to be honest, if you're giving me a choice out of Onana and McGinn, I'll just go for McGinn anyway. So for me, as it looks at the moment, Onana hasn't been a great signing. You can give it all the fist pumps you want at the end of the game, and all these sort of celebrations here and there. But what matters most is what you're doing on the pitch. So yeah, and we haven't sort of seen too much of that. It started off brightly, obviously a goal on his debut, goal in the Champions League, a couple of good performances here and there. But on the face of it, 50 million, comparing him up against Douglas Luiz, who he obviously came in to replace. There's a huge difference. And Douglas Luiz was available more or less every single game. So, yeah, for me, McGinn definitely starts there. And then Tielemans alongside him. I think that works quite well and should work well against Ipswich as well. And then further forward from that, do you change much from the Tottenham game? Jacob Ramsey started on the left. He's got some direct competition now with Marcus Rashford there as well. So, he's going to up his game. Obviously scored the goal in the first minute. Could have really had a hat-trick, if we're being honest, against Tottenham. And maybe should have as well. He's got to work on that sort of one-on-one finishing is what I would suggest in this week. But yeah, Jacob Ramsey perhaps gets the start from the left. Morgan Rogers, obviously, he was up there as a man of the match contender for me. I thought he was, I think Alan Shearer gave it to him on the BBC, but for me, McGinn was the outstanding player against Spurs. But Morgan Rogers comes in as that 10. And if you haven't seen Morgan Rogers' podcast interview on the Villa TV, absolutely fantastic. I mean, I talked about his previous interview they did for Sky Sports as well. Another fantastic sort of listen, and he's such easy on the ears, isn't he, to listen to in terms of the way that he talks, his journey, and what he's done. And he maybe talks a little bit, not too much, but he obviously doesn't give away any sort of trade secrets, I suppose. But he talks about like Unai Emery, demanding of him every single day. Yes, he's done well up to this point, but there's so much more to come. And then he said something about Unai Emery not being happy with him when I think he was losing the ball in a game a couple of times when he was trying to dribble, and then he picked up the ball again and decided to pass it rather than dribble. And Unai Emery wasn't happy with that. He wants Morgan Rogers to take those risks, to drive with the ball, take on players. And if he's just laying off the ball with a simple pass, that's not what Unai Emery wants from him. He wants him to be a bit more creative and a bit more risk and a bit more daring. So it's just interesting to sort of hear about that side of it, and you don't normally hear about that side of it from players. But this was quite an open kind of podcast, really. And he said, obviously, before he signed for Villa as well, obviously when he played against us for Middlesbrough, that he got a call from Jacob Ramsey, obviously that he knows from the England under 21s before, saying that Unai wants to sign you. And he just thought it was a bit of a joke or something or whatever, and didn't think much of it. And then obviously, bids flew in pretty much straight after that Middlesbrough Cup tie and managed to get him for 8 million, was it? Plus, I think, some add-ons. What an absolute bargain of a signing that's turned out to be. But yeah, just a really good listen if you get a chance to. I think it's a good half an hour listen on the podcast on the Villa channel. But yeah, really good, really good. So Morgan Rogers for me is a 10. And then on the right, obviously Bailey did well against Spurs. Obviously didn't get his goal, but was showing a lot more promise than he has done in previous weeks. And it depends on sort of Ollie Watkins' fitness as well, I suppose. So, you've got options all over that sort of front line now. So that right-hand side, it's either going to be Bailey again, and he knows the position. He knows what's demanded of him. He tracked back really well against Spurs as well. I think having the level of competition around him, like we did with Moussa Diaby, is going to give him that kick up the arse, and hopefully we see a resurgence in Leon Bailey in this last second half of the season, really. So you've got Bailey as an option. You've got Asensio that could come on and do that as well, although I prefer Asensio in the 10. Obviously, Rashford can play from the right. Whether you'd get the best out of him from there, I'm not too sure. You've got Daniel Malen who can play there. Is Watkins ready to come back in, or does he need another game? I mean, I think we've got Chelsea coming up after this. So I'm not saying we should take Ipswich lightly in resting players and all that sort of stuff, because you can't do that in the Premier League. And in the reverse fixture, look at that, we drew 2-2 with them. I know, Diego Carlos was in that defence and not doing very well against Liam Delap, but you can't take any team lightly in this Premier League. Even though they sit in 19th position, Ipswich are still a threat. They're still a danger. They've got some good players. So I would want to go with the strongest team as I can, but obviously depending on fitness level. So, hopefully we'll get word from Unai tomorrow about the fitness of Ezri Konsa and Ollie Watkins, even the likes of Ross Barkley and obviously Amadou Onana. How far these guys away? Is it a game too quick for Ollie Watkins? And does he sort of sit out this one? And we go with Daniel Malen up front. And then that probably would mean Leon Bailey on the right, which would then again mean Rashford and Asensio from the bench. Which would be an amazing option to have in the last sort of half an hour again, sort of building up the minutes in Rashford and Asensio, who you've got to remember these guys haven't played a lot of football. So to ask them to play from the start of games, it might be a bit more difficult. But coming in for the last half an hour when teams are tiring, legs are tiring, they're coming on with their fresh, creative minds. It might be better for them to come on for that last sort of half an hour. So personally, that's what I would go with. As much as I want to see Rashford and Asensio in the starting lineup, I think we would probably get best out of them in the last half an hour. So I'm going to go with Ramsey, Rodgers, and Bailey as the front sort of three, and then Daniel Malen up front if Watkins is still out, and if he's not 100%, maybe start Watkins on the bench, because you can always put Watkins for Malen, you can always put Rashford for Ramsey, Asensio for Bailey, shift Rodgers to the right like he did against Arsenal, and all of a sudden the options are just there, aren't they? Such a great bench to have. And you've got Ian Martson that can come on the left hand side of the fence if he needs for Lucadinha. And yeah, so there are plenty of options there in that attacking third that you think should be enough to see off Ipswich. But that would be my starting 11. Not much change to it from the Tottenham game. But yeah, that's what I would kind of go with. So let me know your thoughts, guys. What would be, what would you want to go with? We all want to see Rashford and Asensio in there, but do you throw them in? And then who are you taking out? Are you taking out Jacob Ramsey, who's coming into some good form? Leon Bailey, who probably had one of his better games against Tottenham. And then, yeah, let me know what you think in terms of starting lineup, guys. So looking at Ipswich, as I said, 19th position in the league. Probably not a true reflection of how they play, but results have gone against them recently. 3 wins in the Premier League, 7 draws, and 14 defeats. So they have got a lot of defeats in those games there. Minus 27 goal difference. So they're not free-flowing, scoring lots of goals. They are conceding quite a lot. They've only got 16 points. So they are struggling. I do think they'll get out of it. I do think they will just about stay up. I predicted Everton that would go down, but now that David Moyes has come in there, he's given them, rejuvenated them, and that they came back against Liverpool well yesterday. So I can see Everton maybe staying up. Here's one for you though. Man United, could they be possibly dragged into this relegation fight? Spurs are there also as well, but I think Spurs just have enough to get out of it as long as their injuries come back. But with Man United, I do worry about where the goals are coming from there. But anyway, that's them. So last 5 games for Ipswich. A 4-1 win in the FA Cup against Coventry just recently. Our mate Philogene scored in that game as well. So that's a win for them in the FA Cup. Before that, a 2-1 defeat to Southampton, where Southampton scored in like the 87th minute. I think Liam Delap scored for Ipswich in that one. Then a 4-1 loss to Liverpool. Then a 6-0 home defeat to Manchester City, who are slowly clicking into gear as well. And then a 2-0 defeat to Brighton. So the last 5 games have really been poor result-wise. And what's that? Just 14 goals conceded in the last 5. So not a great record there. And then if you look at their goal scorers and the options that they've got in attacking third, obviously Liam Delap is the standout player. And he's a player that I do like, Liam Delap. I really do. I think he'll be moving on to a bigger team in the summer. Is it someone that we should perhaps be looking at? But now he seems a bit more healthier in terms of frontline options. But he's definitely a player. He knows Morgan Rogers. They played together in the Man City Academy. They came through there. So they're sort of buddies, off the pitch. He's got 9 goals this season. But yeah, I definitely do see him moving on. And then you've got Sam Smodics, who's got 4 goals. Then you've got Amari Hutchinson, who's a tricky winger for them, 2 goals. They've got obviously Jaden Philogene, who's got his first goal against Coventry. And they've also signed the Brighton player on loan in Ciso, who I've always liked the look of. I think he's like 20-year-old attacking midfield player. He's got a great shot on him. So he's someone that we need to be wary of, especially from distance. So that's just going to be, that's what they've got as their attacking kind of threats. And Jack Clark is there as well with 3 goals. And I think he got 2 in the cup against Coventry as well. But maybe he might start this game as well. And looking at the history of this fixture, we've only got 1 loss in the last 14 meetings against Ipswich. And that was in 1994. So I can't see Ipswich rocking up to Villa Park on Saturday and taking 3 points. I do see goals in the game. I hope we can get an early goal like we did against Spurs and just sort of get the crowd up, get the players up again, have a fast start to the game. If we can, then I think, we'll be in a strong position to take control of the game. So if you're asking me for a score prediction for this, I'm going to go Aston Villa 3, Ipswich 1. I'm going to go for us to get some, I say revenge, because obviously we drew 2-2 with them in the reverse fixture, and that was points dropped. Especially I think we played all right in that game, if I remember. I think Emmy made a couple of good saves though, so maybe a draw on that one on reflection was probably the right result. But for this time round at Villa Park, and the record that we've got at Villa Park is very, very strong. We haven't lost in about 8 games or something like that. In the last 8, we haven't lost any. So I'm expecting Villa to be strong. I'm expecting Unai to go strong. And, we've had a week to prepare for this as well. So we should be kind of well rested. Just defensively, obviously, we've got some injuries there and concerns. I do think, Disasi. So I'm saying 3-1 Villa. I'm going to go with Axel Disasi to score first on his debut. And he's got history of this. He scored on his Monaco debut and he scored on his Chelsea debut against Liverpool. I'm going to get him to score on his Villa debut as well. So first goal scorer, Axel Disasi, header from a corner, something like that. Clip this up. And then I'm going to go for Marcus Rashford to get his first goal at Villa Park. And then I'm going to go with Asensio as well. There you go. So the 3 new boys to get their first goals for Aston Villa. To wrap up a 3-1 win. So let me know your score predictions and your scorers. It's quite interesting now. We've got lots of options there, lots of options on the bench. Let me know what you think. I think also on the bench, we probably will have Bogard, obviously. I think that we might see Mosquera, who's a young Colombian centre-back that we've recalled from Real Union. He's quite very tall. He's left-footed as well. Highly rated young player. But don't be surprised if you see the name Mosquera on the Villa bench on Saturday, because he's not featured on the bench yet. But I've got a feeling that he will this time, just considering how slight we are on the bench at the moment in terms of injuries and things like that. So that'll be someone that's probably on the bench for us, and then we'll have all those attacking options as well. Hopefully Barkley or Onana can be on the bench as well and give us some options in that sort of CDM kind of position when we need it late in the game. Barkley's done really well when he's come in. He's able to sort of settle down the pace of the game. But I reckon 3-1 Villa. I think we're going to go strong. I think it's going to be a win. And I hope we continue to sort of climb the table. And I'm looking for a few, first goals for Aston Villa. So Disasi, Asensio and Rashford to get sort of the goals and break their ducks. But anyway, guys, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what your thoughts are on the game. Until the next episode, which will be a match reaction on Saturday after the game. Hopefully celebrating 3 points. I will see you then. Enjoy the rest of your working week, guys. Bye-bye.